Hey guys, welcome to Calm History. My name is Stefan. Tonight we're slipping into sandals, worn leather, slightly damp, and tiptoeing through steam to explore the quiet, aching rhythms of one of history's least glamorous, most overlooked jobs, the Roman bath attendant. Hey, if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you're listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Now find a cozy spot. Take a slow, deep breath, and let your body sink into comfort as we journey back in time together. Congratulations. Right now, the moon still hangs low, the sky purpling at the edges, and you're blinking against gritty eyelids as your day begins before anyone else's even thinks about doing the same. Rome is still half asleep, save for a few cartwheels clattering over uneven stone and the occasional rooster with an aggressive sense of timing. Your tunic itches. Your breath clouds in the cool pre-dawn. You, friend, are about to make warm paradise for people who will never once thank you for it. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this shift without at least one burn and one lecture about towel placement. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when you're all tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bath complex is a looming silhouette against the thinning stars, columns and arches outlined in quiet confidence. Inside, it still smells of yesterday, sweat, oil, wet limestone, and the faintest hint of mildew that no amount of scrubbing has ever quite defeated. Your first task is the furnace. Always the furnace. Because heat doesn't make itself. You move past locked storerooms and silent statues, their stone eyes watching you with judgment that's probably imagined. Probably. A pair of sandals, someone else's, abandoned, sits neatly beside a low bench, as if their owner evaporated mid-massage. That thought gives you a tiny chill. Or maybe it's just how cold it is before the fire gets going. The hypocaust waits like a sleeping dragon below. You open the heavy grate, revealing its greedy maw, and begin feeding it bundles of pine and olive wood. Dry, bark-stripped, and expensive. The wood's cost is docked from someone's wages, but never yours. Yours are far too small to bother garnishing. As the fire stirs to life, light flickers across your face, warming your cheeks even as the rest of your body stays wrapped in the Roman equivalent of a damp towel. The hypocaust genius is in its simplicity. The floor above, raised on pillars, is heated by the glowing bed of coals you tend below. It turns cold stone into a place where senators debate philosophy in nothing but sandals and smugness. Historians still argue whether the earliest designs of these systems came from Greece or developed natively in Roman military camps. What's not debated is who has to clean them, you. As the blaze roars, you shovel out yesterday's ash, now cool and chalky, scooping it into a terracotta bucket that always leaks just enough to leave a trail behind you. You pause to wipe your brow with the sleeve of your tunic, already regretting wearing wool. And then you do it all again. Wood. Sparks. Ash. Repeat. By the time the first glow of morning peeks through the bathhouse oculus, a round window in the ceiling designed more for aesthetic than airflow, you've raised the temperature in the tepidarium just enough that the chill begins to lift. It's like coaxing a stubborn spirit into the room, one that sulks and paces before finally settling in. Now the other attendants begin to stir. You hear a muttered curse, the sound of a dropped amphora, and the unmistakable snore of someone who fell asleep in a linen closet again. Classic Marcus. You greet them with nods, not words. Everyone is tired, and the work is predictable, relentless, and somehow still full of surprises. Like yesterday, when a senator's spoiled nephew tried to wrestle a goose into the caldarium as a prank. You had to mop goose prints off the marble for hours. The goose, in case you're wondering, won. As the sky lightens, birds begin to squabble in the rafters. One of them has stolen a bit of bath linen and is trying, quite ambitiously, to weave a nest midair. You watch it for a moment, envious of its purpose. You head toward the apoditorium, the changing room, where baskets are laid out in neat rows for the bathers. You restock the oil flasks. Unstop the incense burners. You make everything feel effortless so that the senators can talk about Cicero without noticing their perfect surroundings. You also check the drains. One is clogged. Again. Probably fig seeds. Always fig seeds. One of the scribes swears figs are an aphrodisiac, which has led to unfortunate choices in snack location. Some mornings you wish you were just a visitor here, that you could pay your coin, slip into the frigidarium, gasp dramatically, and declare how wonderfully refreshing it is. But instead, you light the incense, chase the birds out of the atrium, and get ready to welcome the same tired cast of characters you saw yesterday, and the day before, and probably forever. Before you know it, there are voices outside. Someone is arguing about bread prices. Another is bragging loudly about a cousin's new mosaic floor. The city is waking up, and that means so is your shift. So you straighten the stacked towels, goat wool, scratchy, always shedding, and check one last time that the floor is safe. Which, considering it's polished marble, is sort of a cosmic joke. The baths will open soon. You glance at the sky. Dawn has officially arrived. And so has your second round of furnace stoking. The first patrons shuffle in with the sun still low, glinting just enough off their sandals to make you wince. They come in groups, never alone, because bathing in Rome isn't just about being clean, it's about being seen. It's a performance, really. Politics, networking, gossip, all with their arms flung over each other's shoulders and nothing but steam and a modesty cloth between them and social disaster. You greet them with the appropriate nod, not too friendly, not too distant. You're supposed to be invisible, and yet always present. Like a marble statue that can fetch oil flasks and clean toe rings. Today's early crowd includes a retired centurion with a permanent sunburn and a laugh like a crumbling aqueduct, a scroll merchant who always complains about the temperature no matter what, and a young nobleman wearing enough perfume to embalm a horse. Classic lineup. You show them to the apoditarium and manage to catch a runaway sandal before it skids into the plunge pool. Crisis averted. For now. They undress quickly, placing their belongings into the cubbyholes, except the nobleman, who insists on his own woven basket and a sprig of rosemary tucked inside. You suppress a smile. He'll lose that basket by midday and blame the gods. Your job, among many, is to watch the valuables. You're not a guard, not officially, but if someone steals a ring or a coin pouch, you'll be the one questioned first. It's always the attendant's fault, after all. It's the rule of, I pay, you suffer. You linger near the frigidarium as the first bather dips his foot into the cold water and immediately regrets every choice that led him here. He makes a theatrical gasp, followed by a muttered prayer to Neptune. The others laugh. The sound echoes up into the high dome like applause from the gods. Meanwhile, you prepare the oils, olive and perfumed, used for anointing before the real bathing begins. Scraping sweat and dirt with a strigil is part of the ritual. A clean bather is one who has been thoroughly rubbed, scraped, oiled, and possibly insulted about their choice in sandals. Historians still argue whether these strigil scrapes were genuinely hygienic, or mostly for show. What's undeniable is how much time it takes, and guess who gets to clean the strigils afterward? You, of course. You, with your little cloth and your even littler patience. The caldarium, the hot room, is finally reaching full steam, and you can feel the walls radiating that slow, humid warmth that seeps into bones and flushes out ambitions. You fan open the bronze doors. Inside, the mist glows gold in the morning light, swirling around the columns like lazy spirits. You step back as the first bather heads in, towel slung over one shoulder like he's about to negotiate a grain treaty. You almost admire the confidence. Almost. One of the other attendants, a wiry boy named Tertius, joins you. He's been here even longer than you, and his sense of humor has calcified into something delightfully sharp. Guess how many times someone will slip and blame me today, he says, handing you a handful of mint leaves. 3, you reply, taking them for the foot washing basins. But one will claim you cursed him. I like that one, he smirks. Makes me feel important. As the bathers cycle through the rooms, cold, warm, hot, You keep track of who's where, which sandal belongs to whom, and which towel has been used more than once. A minor scandal erupted last week when 2 magistrates nearly shared a towel. You're still recovering. A wealthy widow arrives next, with 2 slaves and an expression like she's about to rewrite the 12 tables with her disapproval alone. Her sandals are embroidered, her gaze dagger-sharp. You guide her toward her usual bench and subtly swap out a damp towel for a dry one before she can see it. That right there is professionalism. "Tell the oil boy no lavender today," she murmurs without looking at you. "It gives me headaches. Or maybe visions. Hard to tell." You nod solemnly. Visions are above your pay grade. She settles in with her entourage, and the room shifts around her. Conversations hush. The centurion coughs pointedly and retreats to the tepidarium. Power, in the bathhouse, comes in many forms. Scented oil and well-placed benches among them. A slave girl trips and spills a small amphora of heated water. The splash reaches your feet. You react calmly, grabbing cloths before anyone can complain. The widow narrows her eyes but says nothing. You suspect she enjoys the chaos, just not when it touches her. The day flows like a slow current. New bathers arrive. Others leave, faces flushed, skin gleaming with oil and satisfaction. You escort an elderly scholar who insists on quoting Cicero as he shuffles between rooms, pausing only to sigh dramatically at the loss of virtue in the modern age. You refrain from pointing out he's wearing a tunic 2 decades out of fashion and hasn't bathed since Hadrian. By now, the sun filters brightly through the high windows, catching in the steam and lighting the columns like molten pillars. You pause to stretch your back. Briefly. There's a child crying over a dropped soap ball, and someone's dog has wandered in again, probably chasing the goose. A senator arrives, late as usual, expecting his usual citrus oil, a dry cloth, and a heated basin. You rush to prepare everything. Behind you, Tertius mouths. 5 denarii, he complains anyway. He does. You refill water jars. Mop spilled oil. Quietly remove a broken sandal strap from the drain before it causes a blockage. Every step of your job is a dance, the quiet choreography of service. And somewhere in that dance, you find a kind of rhythm. Predictable. Grounding. Even oddly satisfying. Hey guys. How's your day going? If it's been a great one, drop a 1 in the comments to spread some positive energy. And if things haven't felt quite right, leave a 2, because you're not alone. I'm here with you, walking this journey together, so that each moment ahead feels a little lighter, a little more peaceful. By midday, the bathhouse is in full swing, if steam could swing. The echoing slap of wet soles on marble, the rhythmic scrape of strigils, and the almost musical splashing in the frigidarium become a symphony of body maintenance and ego management. You've memorized its rhythm now. Every creak of a door, every shout for more oil, every awkward cough from a man who stayed too long in the caldarium, it all fits together like tiles in a well-worn mosaic. You move swiftly through the apoditarium, arms loaded with fresh towels still slightly warm from the drying rack. Patrons barely glance up, absorbed in arguments about land boundaries or reciting poetry no one asked for. One man is loudly claiming Virgil predicted his property dispute. You don't correct him, though you're pretty sure Virgil had no strong opinions about garden walls. The smell of the midday crowd is different. Gone is the morning chill and quiet caution. Now it's sweat, perfumes, olive oil, and heated skin. Your nostrils tingle. You pretend you're in a spice market. It helps. In the tepidarium, a pair of merchants bicker softly over amphory pricing while reclining on stone benches slick with condensation. They wave you over and ask for more warm water. You nod, retrieve a bronze ewer, and pour slowly, carefully aiming the stream so it arcs gracefully, just how they like it. You get a brief nod. Success. They return to their murmured debate. One of them believes he was overcharged for Syrian wine. The other insists it was the amphora's shape that made it expensive. Historians still argue whether such amphora snobbery was sincere or just another form of elite performance. Either way, you refill their basins and move on. Next, you spot the governor's aide entering with a scroll under one arm and a face like thunderclouds. That's never good news. The governor himself doesn't bathe here, too common, but his people do, and their moods tend to trickle downhill. Fast. The aide gestures for you to follow. You do, towel over your arm, sandals sticking slightly to the wet stone. He stops in a quiet alcove, pulls a pouch from his belt, and hisses, "Keep an eye on this. I'll be 15 minutes. You glance at the pouch. Heavy. Likely coins or some bribe he doesn't want his rivals to see. You take it without a word and tuck it inside a linen-lined cubbyhole with a discreet wax seal. There's an art to this, after all. You're not just holding items, you're holding secrets. Back in the frigidarium, a philosopher is trying to explain the soul's journey through heat and cold. No one's listening, except for a boy in the corner drawing a fish in the condensation on the wall. Honestly, you relate more to the fish. You pause to refill a basin and catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished bronze mirror. Your tunic is damp, your hair clings slightly to your forehead, and your face glows with that kind of glow only hard-earned sweat can bring. You look like someone who knows exactly how to prevent towel riots. Which is accurate. A patron calls your name. Well, not your name, exactly, but a version of it shouted with a mouthful of dates. Titus! No, the other one! More oil, if you please! You deliver the flask and discreetly pick up a date that's rolled onto the floor before someone slips on it. Last week's injury report still haunts your dreams. Bruised elbow, sprained dignity. Near the caldarium, Tertius waves you over. The steam pipe's making that sound again. He mutters. You both lean down to listen, a low, burbling gurgle that suggests a blockage. Great. You locate the iron hook kept for just this purpose and begin poking gently into the narrow pipe vent. Steam hisses out, followed by a soggy clump of leaves and oddly, half a sandal. You and Tertius exchange a look. Guess someone bathed a bit too enthusiastically. He shrugs. The air here is thick and fragrant, tinged with rosemary, eucalyptus, and that indefinable warm stone scent that never really leaves your tunic. You wipe your hands and go to check on the lost and found basket, which currently contains a comb, 2 mismatched earrings, and a clay whistle shaped like a bird. You wonder briefly about the story behind that one. A woman calls from the women's section. She needs a dry cloth and something to scrub sandal marks from her calf. You gather what she needs and deliver it with a nod. She thanks you without looking up, absorbed in discussing with her friend whether it's better to marry a man with land or a man with literary ambitions. They both seem unconvinced by either. You catch a brief moment of stillness in the corridor. No shouting. No splashing. Just the sound of dripping water and your own breathing. It lasts 7 whole seconds. Then someone drops a soap ball and blames the gods again. You respond with your emergency face, calm, helpful, inwardly exhausted. At midday, food arrives, trays of olives, flatbread, cheese, and some sweet dates dusted with flour. Not for you, of course. But a kind patron sometimes lets you take the leftovers. You sneak a bite when no one's watching. It tastes like reward and mild disobedience. Delicious. The bathhouse is humming now, full of people laughing, complaining, and scrubbing their way towards spiritual cleanliness. Or at least, good dinner conversation. You circulate with oil jars and fresh cloths, responding to gestures more than words. You've learned how to read a raised eyebrow, a tapped foot, a dramatic sigh. You mop. You pour. You glide. Always one step ahead of disaster, one step behind recognition. And somewhere in the steam, you forget what time it is. Which is probably the point. The sun begins its slow descent, slanting golden light through the high windows of the bathhouse. It catches in the steam, painting sunbeams with warm, misty strokes that make everything look a little dreamlike, until you step in a puddle that's suspiciously warm and not from the caldarium. You'll deal with that later. Afternoon hours bring a different kind of crowd. The wealthy and powerful have mostly finished their business and wandered off to late lunches or long-winded orations. In their place come the clerks, teachers, veterans with stiff joints, and retired gladiators who now teach schoolchildren how not to fall during relay races. These are the people who grumble less and tip better. You pass an older man rubbing his knees, his sandals set neatly beside him like little obedient pets. "Broke it fighting a lion," he tells anyone who'll listen. "No, not in the arena. In a grain warehouse." You just nod politely. Historians still argue whether such stories were exaggerated, or if Rome truly had an excess lion problem outside designated performance zones. You make your way toward the palestra, the open-air exercise yard adjacent to the baths. A few younger men and one determined grandmother are tossing medicine balls and grappling in the dust. You sweep the walkway as they train, careful not to flinch when someone crashes into a column. Again. A reed flute plays softly in the background, probably someone's cousin with artistic ambitions. The melody loops, gentle and persistent, like a sleepy bee circling an overripe fig. You find yourself humming along before remembering you're not paid to hum, just to make sure no one slips while oiling their thighs too aggressively. Inside, the tepidarium remains the bathhouse's beating heart. Not too hot, not too cold, just perfectly warm and endlessly echoing. You pass a man slowly carving his initials into the wooden bench with a fishbone. You make a mental note to sand that down later. Again. The storage niches are fuller now, tunics folded, cloaks draped, sandals stacked like tired beetles. You sort through them absent-mindedly, keeping an eye out for pickpockets. Technically, thefts are rare, but suspicion is not. And nothing ruins a relaxing bath like yelling about your stolen sash. One of the junior attendants flags you down. "The drain's clogged again," he says, pointing to the sudsy overflow in the corner of the caldarium. You grab the long-handled hook, sigh internally, and set to work. The water sloshes around your ankles as you prod the drain gently. Out comes a wad of hair, a sprig of mint, and a small bronze coin that you quietly pocket for later good luck. You find a brief moment to sit on a stool near the drying wall, rubbing your calves and stretching your back. There's a quiet camaraderie among attendants, each one bearing invisible maps of strain across their spines. You exchange a look with Tertius, who mouths, "7 drop towels, 2 soap balls, and a lost sandal today." You nod, impressed. It's only halfway through the shift. You rise again as a group of visiting merchants enter, loudly discussing tariffs and whether or not it's bad luck to wash before sealing a deal. One of them carries a small dog under one arm like it's a scroll case. The dog sneezes. You fetch a clean cloth for it, because of course you do. You pause in the frigidarium doorway to check the temperature. Cold. Still startling. A boy dares his friend to jump in. He does. Regrets it immediately. You pass him a towel and a sympathetic smile. His teeth are chattering in iambic pentameter. In the side room, a tutor helps a boy with his writing, using steam from a basin to soften a wax tablet before carving out fresh letters. You peek over his shoulder and catch the phrase, "Goats are not for racing." Intriguing. There's a story behind that lesson, surely. You walk the perimeter again, adjusting benches, replenishing soap, and checking on the herbs simmering gently in the warm water trough. Lavender, sage, a hint of thyme. You stir them carefully, releasing their sleepy fragrance into the air. You breathe deep and almost feel relaxed, until a shout echoes from the apodyterium. "My sandal is missing!" You head there, meet the offended party, and begin the sandal hunt. Turns out, someone mistook it for their own. You facilitate the exchange with the delicacy of a treaty negotiator. A handshake, an apology, and a whispered curse about bad eyesight later, harmony is restored. A pair of young scribes arrive next, carrying rolls of parchment, and all the worries of mid-level bureaucracy. They complain about census numbers while oiling their arms. You help them reach the spots they can't quite get and overhear a heated debate about whether goat with one horn should count as half an animal or a whole one. Historians still argue the same thing. Seriously. You refill the oil lamps along the corridor, checking the wicks and trimming them with little bronze scissors. The light flickers warmly on the painted walls. Mythical scenes, nymphs and satyrs, some so faded you can only guess the story. You like to think one depicts an early version of customer service, a nymph offering a towel to a confused centaur. The shadows lengthen. Patrons drift out more slowly now, some drying their hair under the sunbeams, others wrapped in fresh linen and chatting about dinner plans. You collect the used cloths and start the slow, patient work of rinsing them in the back room's trough, wringing them out, and laying them flat on reed racks to dry overnight. You glance at the sundial outside. It's approaching the hour when the bathhouse will start to empty in earnest. But you're not done yet. The quiet hours are coming, and they bring their own strange, lovely rhythm. Your arms ache. Your tunic clings damply. And yet, something in the steady ritual of water, steam, and shared space feels, dare you say, almost sacred. The final rays of daylight slant across the courtyard, stretching long golden arms over the stone walls and dappling the bathhouse tiles with warmth. You pause on the threshold of the tepidarium and take a breath, one of those deep, end of a long shift kind of breaths that comes with a little satisfaction and a lot of damp fabric clinging to your ribs. Evening in the bathhouse is quieter, softer. The midday crowd has ebbed away, replaced by an entirely different species of bather. These are the regulars, the philosophers, poets, pensioned centurions, and that one flute player who claims he once serenaded the emperor's second cousin at a banquet. You don't question it. You just refill his oil jar. The lighting shifts with the setting sun. You trim the oil lamps once more, careful not to spill on the mosaic floor that's perpetually slick. Tiny flames dance along the walls, casting flickering shadows of fig branches and bare feet. A bat skitters through the upper rafters and you wonder, not for the first time, whether it pays rent. You return to the laundry corner and begin folding the linens you washed earlier, somehow still warm from the afternoon sun, infused with the scent of thyme and olive oil. The rhythm of folding is hypnotic, almost meditative. You match edges, smooth creases, stack with care. It's a process your hands know better than your mind does by now. A familiar voice breaks your focus. Old Publius, the former schoolteacher, calls out from the frigidarium. The water's gotten colder, you know. I swear it used to be less cold than death. You shout back. Death didn't pay for a bath. He laughs. You've earned that one. He's seated on a bench, ankles soaking, slowly carving a verse into a wax tablet. You've seen him do this for years. Always different words, always the same sigh afterward. Historians still argue whether these impromptu poetic sessions were meant for future generations, or just clever excuses to avoid going home to loud grandchildren. You help a younger attendant move a stack of firewood into the hypocaust furnace chamber. The heat wafts upward through the raised floors, warming the caldarium above. The design still amazes you, even after all this time. Hot air funneled through a web of hollow tiles and flues, radiating warmth without the need to touch flame. Roman engineering at its finest. And yet, the floors still manage to scorch every second pair of sandals. You take a quiet moment to refresh the herbs steeping in the caldarium corner. A fresh bundle of bay leaves and rosemary is lowered into the bronze basin, releasing a scent that's halfway between holiday feast and funeral procession. Somehow it works. A young couple enters next, giggling and sneaking sideways glances like they've discovered a secret path to romance no one else knows. You give them their towels and pretend not to hear the bad poetry he whispers while she oils her elbows. Your skin glows brighter than a temple lantern, he murmurs. She snorts. You excuse yourself before hearing more metaphors about goats. In the apoditorium, someone has rearranged the sandals into pairs again, except none of the pairs match. You sigh and start sorting. One is too large, the other has been chewed, possibly by the philosopher's spaniel. As you organize them, a boy tiptoes in, dripping and red-cheeked, clutching a bundle of cloth that was, until recently, your clean stack. You hand him a towel with a raised eyebrow. He bolts. You pass by a side chamber where a massage is in progress. A stocky veteran lies face down on a reed mat while a masser, tiny but terrifying, works knots from his shoulders like she's churning butter. He groans once, then whispers, "Thank you," into the stone floor. Elsewhere, someone strums a lyre. The melody is slow, meandering, almost asleep. It drifts across the steam like a bird circling low, just waiting to perch somewhere quiet. You pause to listen. Even the water seems to hush. The mosaics glow in the lamplight now, those little colored tiles pressed together in scenes of myth and harvest. One features Neptune riding dolphins. Another shows a man chasing his runaway cloak. You prefer the latter. The final guests of the night begin to wander in. An older woman arrives with a basket of oils and a scarf wrapped tightly around her head. She's a retired midwife, and rumor has it she delivered over 200 babies in her time, some of them even human. You help her hang her scarf, and she pats your cheek like you're still 5. A silence begins to settle into the space, not from absence of sound, but from comfort. The soft murmurs, the splash of water, the occasional low laugh, these noises belong here, like the scent of olive oil or the groan of the furnace. You kneel to scrub a corner where bath salts have crusted into the tiles, humming a tune you've known since your first year in the baths. It has no words. It doesn't need them. It just feels like home. A small boy tugs your sleeve, holding out a wooden duck he dropped in the caldarium. You dry it gently and hand it back, watching his face light up like you've restored a lost deity. He runs back to his mother, duck in hand, joy in step. You look around. The benches are half empty. The steam has thinned. The day has softened into memory. Still, there's work to do. Always more towels, more sandals, more soapstones to stack and drains to clear. But for a moment, you just stand there, soaking in the warmth, the smell, the soft hum of a place that's both ordinary and somehow eternal. You step out into the cooler night air, exhaling a breath that feels like it's been steeped in eucalyptus and responsibility. Behind you, the hum of the baths fades into a low murmur, part steam, part conversation, part the memory of footsteps across wet stone. The sky above Rome is streaked with dark blue and fading copper, and the first star dares to blink overhead like it's testing the waters. You're not done for the night, of course. The bathhouse never truly sleeps, not while there are lanterns to refill, ledgers to update, benches to scrub, and a rotating cast of eccentric regulars who insist on bathing long past dinner. You tuck a clean towel over your shoulder, wipe your hands on your tunic, and head for the back room, where bookkeeping meets damp clay. Ah yes, the ledgers. Because what's a bathhouse without accounting? The Romans didn't get their empire by ignoring receipts. You settle beside a wax tablet and a stylus that has definitely seen better days and begin copying the day's notable entries into a scroll. Most of them are mundane. 4 bundles of firewood delivered, 2 new oil jugs opened, 1 minor dispute over locker space resolved with a stern look and an extra towel. But then there are the more memorable lines. Goat entered a potatorium. Removed gently. Claimed by red-haired baker. That one will be worth remembering. As will. Poet left behind sandal. Insists it was stolen by muse. You add a tiny flourish to that one, mostly because you can. Historians still argue whether these kinds of records were taken seriously or were meant more as anecdotes. But considering the sheer volume of them that survive, you suspect it was both. Romans had an odd gift for blending bureaucracy with bedtime stories. There's a knock at the doorframe. You look up to see Lucius, the manager of the public latrines next door, holding out a chipped amphora and looking sheepish. "We're out of vinegar solution," he says. Again. You nod and wordlessly hand him a fresh jar. You've had this conversation enough times to skip the dialogue. Once the scroll is finished, you return it to the low shelf above the tally stones. A little pyramid of pebbles helps keep count of towel usage, and 1 single red bead marks the occurrence of incidents worth speaking to someone about. So far today, it's been blessedly lonely. You wander back to the tepidarium to extinguish a few lamps. The last bathers are emerging, their feet pink from the warm water, their faces soft and half sleepy. You know the look. The bathhouse has a way of melting defenses, like a good stew or a surprise day off. One young man lingers near the oil-scraping bench, absently rubbing his shoulders. You ask if he needs anything else. He says no, but his eyes drift toward the mural of Apollo and Daphne on the far wall. He never catches her. He murmurs, You nod. Not the point, I think. He smiles and leaves. You fetch the amphora of leftover oil and begin wiping down the wooden benches. It's part cleaning, part ceremony. A kind of closing ritual that marks the end of service. The benches have absorbed decades of gossip, philosophy, flirtation, and complaints about everything from taxes to sandals. You like to think they'd grown if they could, just to join the conversation. A moth flutters near your lantern. You watch it dance, its wings catching the light like parchment scraps in a breeze. It lands on the wall beside a small inscription, just 2 words carved neatly in Latin, Aqua Pax. Water peace. You smile. Not a bad motto for a place like this. The hypocaust has cooled slightly now, the last flames banked into smoldering coals. You poke at them with a long iron rod, mostly to make sure everything's safe. The heat rises in lazy curls, slow as a sleeping dog's breath. You wonder how many fires like this have burned through the decades, keeping the caldarium warm for strangers who never imagined you'd be here doing the same centuries later. You sweep up a few stray olive pits near the cold plunge. Someone always drops them there, no matter how many warnings you give. The warning tile, hand-painted with a goat slipping dramatically, is still drying nearby. You're proud of that one. Back in the main atrium, a sleepy bard tunes his lyre. His melody is a lullaby from the provinces, something about moonlight on a river and a fisherman who keeps forgetting his oars. You lean against a column and let it fill the space like warm air. Music lingers in bathhouses longer than in temples, you're convinced. You check the schedule board near the entrance. Tomorrow is a festival day, Saturnale's Eve, which means double traffic, double noise, and triple sandals. You make a mental note to rise early and charm the towel washer into arriving on time. A bribe of dates and a good joke might do it. You extinguish the final oil lamp in the tepidarium. Darkness creeps in slowly, like it's reluctant to disturb the mood. The last glow from the braziers flickers against the tilework. A mosaic of Neptune tilts his trident at just the right angle to catch the amber light. You swear he winks. Outside, night has deepened. Stars peek through the haze, and somewhere nearby, a fountain bubbles with practiced ease. You unlatch the main door and prop it slightly ajar, letting the cool air swirl into the warmth behind you. Before you leave, you take one last sweep of the room. Benches empty, towels folded, oils capped, sandals paired, more or less. The bathhouse is at rest. You smile. And then, just as you're about to step out, you hear the unmistakable sound of a sandal slapping wet tile and a small voice. I forgot my duck. Of course he did. You crouch beside the small boy, who is now peering anxiously at the edge of the caldarium, where the bathwater laps lazily against the stone lip. He's pointing. My duck, he says again, more dramatically this time. You look, and there it is, floating nobly near the far corner like some rubbery maritime dignitary, bobbing gently in the afterglow of 100 sweaty Romans. You sigh the kind of sigh that only bath attendants and overworked innkeepers have perfected. Then, rolling up your tunic sleeves with theatrical resignation, you grab the wooden ladle used for dousing coals and expertly fish out the toy. It's not even a duck, really. More like a lump of carved cork vaguely shaped like poultry. But you hand it over with a flourish. The boy beams as if you've saved Troy, and his mother whispers a thank you while dragging him out by one clean but slippery arm. With the door now firmly latched behind them, you finally allow yourself a long, indulgent exhale. The kind of exhale that says, no more oil spills, no more philosophical debates over soap, and absolutely no more aquatic poultry. For tonight, anyway. You drift into the back storeroom. It's cool, a little musty, and cluttered with amphorae, extra sandals, buckets, half-burnt torches, and the world's oldest broom that someone keeps refusing to throw out because it's seasoned. You lean against a stack of laundry baskets and allow your eyes to close for a moment. But no more than a moment, because, unlike Rome's elite, you don't get naps between courses. Still, this late hour offers one unique privilege: solitude. The bathhouse, emptied of voices and steam, becomes something different. Something sacred. The tiles whisper with the memory of footsteps. The stone walls hold stories like cupped hands. You light a single beeswax candle and carry it into the frigidarium, letting its glow paint long shadows over the mosaic of frozen waves on the floor. This is your favorite room at night. It's quiet in a way that doesn't demand anything. Even the statues seem to be taking a break from their heroic poses. The marble Venus in the alcove, so poised during the day, looks almost shy in candlelight, like she's been caught off guard without her public face. You take a seat on a dry bench and lean your head back. You've done everything. Tomorrow, the fires will be lit again. The towels will be flung around like celebratory banners. A senator will argue with a baker over the merits of goat's milk skin treatments. And some unfortunate scribe will once again mistake the foot ointment jar for the olive tapenade. But right now, none of that matters. What matters is the cool stone under your legs, the flicker of gold on tile, and the rhythmic dripping of water that somehow makes everything feel more whole. Like time itself is stretching out its limbs and settling in for the night. You nibble a date from your satchel, stolen fair and square from the food stand across the street. The vendor never minds. He says bath attendants keep the neighborhood from smelling like boiled sandals, which is a compliment you've chosen to cherish. Historians still argue whether frigidaria were meant purely for cooling the body or also calming the mind. But sitting here now, with candlelight and quiet wrapped around you like a warm cloak, you can see how it might be both. You think back to earlier, when the day began in darkness and wood smoke. You were hauling kindling while your breath made tiny clouds. And now here you are, full circle, watching those same flames die down from the other side of the sky. The bathhouse is a creature with a heartbeat. You help it wake, help it breathe, and finally, help it sleep. You stand slowly, stretch out a kink in your back, and return to the supply nook. One last chore remains: mixing tomorrow's oil blend. You pick out a jar of thick olive base, open the box of dried herbs, mint, lavender, crushed laurel, and begin stirring them in. You do it without thinking now. The proportions are muscle memory, but the scent is always new, fresh, comforting. You pour the blend into a glazed ceramic jug, stop it with a cork, and set it on the shelf marked pre-dawn use. There's something oddly lovely about that phrase, like a secret recipe shared only with the fog. You make a quick round, checking the drainage spouts, brushing crumbs from the benches, and tightening the lids on the vinegar pots. It's not glamorous work, but it's yours, and it's needed. Back in the atrium, the candle is burning low. You hold it up near the statue of Hygeia, goddess of cleanliness and health. Her carved eyes seem to meet yours in that weird, flickering way statues sometimes do. You offer her the smallest of bows. Another day without catastrophic mold. You whisper. We live to scrub again. She says nothing. But then again, she never does. You snuff the candle between two wet fingers and walk slowly to the main door. You unlatch it with care, step outside, and listen. Rome at night breathes differently. The shouting is gone, the dust has settled, and the air carries only the gentle rustle of laundry left out to dry and the clink of a distant night guard making his rounds. Above, the stars look down like tiny promises. And behind you, in the bathhouse you help clean, soothe, and wrangle back into order, the tiles glisten quietly in the dark, cool, clean, and waiting. You close the door behind you with that same gentle nudge you've used every evening for years, firm enough to seal the night in, soft enough not to wake the dust. There's something satisfying about that final moment of the day. No fanfare. Just a quiet click and the knowledge that you've done your part to keep the empire's pores clean and its politicians slightly less greasy. The street outside is narrow, uneven, and smells faintly of olives, vinegar, and someone's failed fish stew. You don't linger. Your feet know the way by heart, navigating the dips and bumps between paving stones as if Rome herself has memorized your route. You head home along the back alleys, passing shuttered stalls and half-asleep cats curled on roof tiles. Occasionally, a voice calls out from a balcony, sometimes arguing, sometimes laughing, sometimes a philosophical monologue delivered to nobody in particular. That's Rome. Loud even when she's tired. Your own insula, apartment building, is 5 stories high and leans ever so slightly to the left, like a loaf of bread that gave up halfway through baking. You live on the 2nd floor. Not too far to climb, but high enough to avoid rats, floods, and the occasional overly affectionate piglet. Inside, the walls are cracked, the ceiling low, and the air full of that charming blend of clay dust and mystery spice. You share this space with 2 other bath attendants, Lucio, who snores like a tragic myth, and Felix, who somehow always smells like warm onions no matter how clean he gets. Neither of them is home yet. Or they're asleep. Or pretending to be. Either way, the room is yours for now. You light a tiny oil lamp, set it on the ledge by the window, and shrug off your damp tunic. It lands in a heap beside the day's satchel, a pile of rags, bread crusts, and 2 slightly squashed figs from that vendor who still owes you a favor. You eat one absent-mindedly. It tastes like summer trapped in something that forgot how to be fruit. But it's sweet. And you're too tired to be picky. You lie back on the straw-stuffed mattress and stare up at the uneven beams above. They creak gently when the wind nudges them, an ancient lullaby you've grown to trust. Somewhere below, someone's baby begins crying. Somewhere above, a jug drops and shatters. Someone curses. Someone else shushes. And just like that, the city's rhythm returns, softer now, like the heartbeat of a tired animal. It's strange to think that while you sleep here, the public baths continue to exist in silence. As though the marble walls and hot stones and dripping faucets are holding their breath, waiting for you to come back. Tomorrow, you'll open the doors again. You'll rake out the ashes, test the temperature, set out the oil jugs, and greet the senator who still insists on having his feet massaged by someone wearing a red sash. You'll smile. You always do. Because no matter how absurd their requests, you know this job has rhythm. And there's comfort in rhythm. Historians still argue whether Roman bath attendants were respected or pitted. Some texts hint at admiration for their discipline and skill, others lump them in with tavern keepers and street performers. But you know the truth lies somewhere between. People don't thank you often. But they need you. That counts for something. You reach over and pull the thin linen sheet over your chest. It's still warm from the day's sun. Tomorrow, it'll smell like smoke and soap again. That's fine. It always does. Just before sleep claims you, a memory flickers, earlier in the caldarium, when you caught the old merchant humming under his breath, tapping his fingers against the bench to an invisible tune. You'd paused, and he'd grinned. Used to be a musician, he said. Now I'm mostly damp. That made you laugh. Still does. There's something oddly poetic about these lives intersecting in steam and soap and water. Everyone strips down, literally and otherwise. Status dissolves with sweat. Arguments soften in the heat. Strangers leave as slightly cleaner strangers, maybe, but still. There's a kind of magic in that. You turn over, pressing your cheek against the rough cloth of the pillow. The window lets in a sliver of starlight, just enough to make out the outline of your jug of oil, sitting on the sill like a quiet guardian. Outside, Rome murmurs to itself in alleyway whispers and rooftop echoes. A dog barks, then immediately regrets it. Somewhere, a poet is finishing a line and hoping it sounds more profound in the morning. Somewhere else, a potter dreams of clay that doesn't crack. And here, in your crooked little corner of the city, you drift into sleep with the scent of lavender oil still clinging faintly to your wrists. The bathhouse will wait for you. The city will too. But for now, there's nothing more to scrub, no soap to refill, no marble to polish. Just this moment. This breath. Tomorrow will come early. But tonight you rest. Before the first bird chirps, before the city begins its daily chorus of cartwheels, merchant shouts, and off-key flute solos from someone's optimistic nephew, you're already up. The air is cool, cool enough to raise goosebumps along your arms as you pull on your still damp tunic. It smells like rosemary and old soap. You don't know why. You didn't wash it. Maybe it just absorbed the bathhouse's identity like a sponge for scent and shame. You tie your sandals with fingers that still remember yesterday's burns. The trick you've learned is to focus on the knots, not the pain. Rome isn't kind to those who dawdle. Your roommates are both asleep. Lucio is face down and snoring in heroic proportions. Felix is curled in a way that suggests a bad dream or an ill-fated attempt at yoga. You step over both and exit quietly. The morning streets are surprisingly alive. Bread sellers already shout their wares. A woman balances a basket of dates on her head while arguing with her goat, who, to be fair, seems to be winning. You pass a soldier flirting with a baker's apprentice. She pretends not to notice but drops an extra roll into his satchel anyway. You arrive at the bath complex just as the sun peeks over the rooftops. The shadows are long and golden, slicing across the tiles like quiet reminders of time's gentle push. You fish out the heavy bronze key and unlock the main doors. They creak open, reluctant and regal. And there it is again. That silence. That almost religious hush that fills the empty baths each dawn. You inhale. It smells of damp stone, cooled ash, and yesterday's laughter. You love this moment, the stillness before the water runs, before the orders start flying, before someone inevitably asks you to oil their elbows in a very specific counterclockwise direction. You light the fires first. The hypocaust needs time. It's the oldest part of your job and the most satisfying. Feeding fire beneath marble feels like cheating, like offering a dragon a snack under a temple. The wood hisses and catches. Smoke curls upward. The bathhouse begins to wake. Next, you test the basins. The cold pool's chill is bracing enough to shame a gladiator. The warm basin is more temperamental. You stir it with a long wooden paddle, watching for patches of uneven heat. One day, a scribe fell asleep in this pool and claimed he received divine visions. Realistically, he just overheated. But ever since then, people have been requesting the vision seat. You refill the oil jugs, press out the linen cloths, line up the scrubbing strigils. There's a rhythm here, like preparing an altar. Which, in a way, you are. Romans don't just clean themselves in baths. They renew, argue, confess, plot, nap, and occasionally pretend they're philosophers while soaking their feet. You remember the poet who once asked if steam counted as divine breath. You told him yes, but only if it smelled faintly of sandalwood. He nodded solemnly, and then slipped on a bar of soap. Historians still argue whether bath attendants were slaves, freedmen, or citizens. It depended on the bathhouse, the city, and sometimes the century. You're a paid worker. Not rich. Not poor. Somewhere solidly in the middle of the empire's sweaty heartbeat. By the time the first patrons arrive, your hands are raw from hauling, scrubbing, lifting. You nod greetings to the familiar ones, a retired centurion who always asks if you've met Jupiter personally, a pair of sisters who insist on hot towels folded like peacocks, and a merchant who smells like cinnamon and guilt. They begin their rituals. Undressing, dipping, sighing, complaining, always complaining. The water's too hot. The marble's too cold. The benches are too hard. The world is too unfair. You nod sympathetically while massaging oil into someone's back, wondering how many goat-based debts they're secretly avoiding. You keep your face neutral. You listen. You scrub. You stir the fire again. Time stretches in odd ways here. A single hour can feel like a procession of emperors. But also, in a blink, it's midday and you're being asked if figs go bad faster in hot rooms. They do. But the senator eats them anyway. You steal bites of bread between tasks. A crumb here. A crust there. One of the other attendants passes you a handful of almonds and a wink. You're all in this together, the invisible hands that keep Rome polished, scented, steamed, and mostly unburned. A girl slips and falls near the cold pool. You help her up. She blushes. Her mother thanks you. You return to your duties like a ghost with a sponge. You glance at the sunbeams slicing through the upper windows. It's beginning to shift. The golden afternoon stretch is coming. That lull before the evening rush. You allow yourself a breath. A moment. Just one. You lean against the wall, hands on hips, and close your eyes. The warmth of the marble behind you seeps into your spine. Outside, the empire may be conquering, expanding, collapsing, whatever empires do. But here, inside these walls, you're just a tired bath attendant hoping someone else will mop the next puddle. Of course, they won't. But you'll do it anyway. The lull doesn't last long. Just as your shoulders begin to relax, a familiar clatter echoes from the atrium, the unmistakable sound of a wealthy Roman arriving late and expecting the entire empire to pivot in response. You straighten up. And sure enough, in glides Gaius Celsus Maximus, wearing a tunic that probably cost more than your year's wages and a smirk sharpened by inheritance and garlic-stuffed olives. His sandals sparkle. You're not even sure how that's possible. Behind him shuffle two servants, one fanning him and the other trying, desperately, to keep his robe from dragging through a puddle. Spoiler, they fail. He makes a beeline for the warm pool and gestures broadly. I require ambience. You raise an eyebrow. Ambience? Yes, he says. Scented steam. Quiet music. A towel that smells like time and triumph. You resist the urge to ask whether he'd also like the sun redirected or the aqueduct to sing. Instead, you nod. You signal to the other attendants. A jug of perfumed water is poured gently over hot stones. The room fills with a sweet, heady mist, lavender and citrus, the signature of people too rich to do their own laundry. You retrieve one of the good towels, the ones embroidered with laurel leaves, and hand it to him with the ceremonial flourish he clearly expects. He sighs contentedly. Ah, Rome. Meanwhile, the older regulars are unimpressed. One grumbles that in his day, towels didn't have opinions. Another accuses Celsus of being more old than man. A third loudly wonders if there's still room in the caldarium, or if it's been officially annexed by his ego. You smile under your breath. There's always a bit of theater in a bathhouse. Still, even Gaius Celsus Maximus has to obey the order of things. After soaking, he must scrub. And that's where you come in again, armed with oil, a strigil, and the patience of a saint who's been demoted to bathroom duty. He talks while you work. About politics. About chariot races. About a new play that involves a talking fish who predicts Senate decisions. You make appropriate noises. Ah, fascinating. Indeed. One time you said truly profound, and he quoted you to someone the next day as if it were philosophy. The truth is, most of your job is listening. You're a living sponge, absorbing secrets, gossip, half-baked business ideas, and deeply personal confessions that arrive with the same urgency as a stubbed toe. Today, it's a senator's nephew whispering about unpaid debts. Yesterday, it was two women planning to fake an illness to avoid a dull wedding. Once, someone cried because his pet turtle wouldn't look at him anymore. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were places of healing, politics, or social control. The answer, as you know, is yes. All of the above. And also somewhere to loudly pass gas and pretend no one heard. As Gaius exits the tepidarium, towel draped like a toga of victory, another patron slips in. A quiet one. You like those. They don't demand scented ambience or reenact Caesar's conquest in monologue form. She nods. You nod back. No words exchanged. Just the shared understanding that water, heat, and silence can fix more than doctors. She brings her own strigil. That earns respect. She also tips. That earns gratitude. You refill oil jars again. Rearrange towels. Replace a chipped basin before anyone notices. The marble is slick, but you've developed a sixth sense for slipping zones. Your feet move like a dancer, albeit one who's perpetually underpaid and slightly damp. A slave boy brings in another batch of firewood. You help him stack it. He tells you about a lizard he saw eating a fig. You say that's a sign of good luck. You have no idea if it is, but he beams anyway. The rhythm returns. Splash. Steam. Footsteps. Laughter. Grumbles. Whispered confessions. The occasional sound of someone slipping and then pretending they meant to. You escort an elderly man to a bench and help him lower into the pool. He thanks you like you've carried him across the Rubicon. You nod, but inside it matters. You help people reclaim ease in their bodies, if only for a while. Even when they don't notice, you do. The sun shifts again. Afternoon bleeds into early evening. A golden hush settles over the place. It's your favorite moment, when the chaos slows, and the bathhouse becomes a sanctuary of softened voices and cooling air. You mop up a spill, light a fresh brazier, wrap someone's ankle in cloth soaked with rosemary water. These small things, they're what make you essential. Not glamorous, but essential. One of the scribes walks by, humming a half-remembered melody. He always does this when his day's been good. You hum back. It's off-key. He grins anyway. You check the fire beneath the hypocaust. Still strong. Still steady. Like you? A boy sneaks in through the side gate, trailing muddy footprints. You scold him gently and help him clean up. He promises to come back tomorrow and not step in goose droppings first. You doubt it. But you appreciate the optimism. Someone asks where the good oil is. You pretend not to know. It's hidden behind the old amphora that nobody moves. You discovered that spot. It's your secret stash. Attendant perks. As the shadows stretch longer, you finally let your shoulders drop for real. Your spine cracks in 3 places. You smile. That's how you know the day's almost done. You sip cool water from a clay cup. Sit for a moment on a low stool. Your feet ache, but in that familiar way. Like the ache of a well-sung song or a story told one too many times and still worth telling. Somewhere behind you, someone sighs with deep, content relief. You think, not a bad way to earn a denarius. And the bathhouse hums on, alive, echoing, and always a little too warm. The quiet doesn't last. You hear it before you see it, a clatter of sandals, a bark of laughter, and then a full-on splash. Someone has cannonballed into the frigidarium like it's a personal swimming contest, not a place of quiet cooling and dignity. A moment later, 2 younger men emerge, soaked and unrepentant, their tunics clinging and their grins shining like bronze in sunlight. You sigh. Deeply. You're not even mad, just resigned. It's the same duo every week, Tullis and Morrow, recently promoted clerks who now think wealth equals permission. They arrive late, make noise, and leave puddles the size of small provinces in their wake. And yet, they also tip. Generously. Which buys them just enough patience to keep you from dumping cold water down their tunics in retaliation. You hand them towels. Thick ones? Mostly so you don't have to clean up after their footprints for the next hour. As they wrestle over who gets the warmer towel, an older man walks by, shaking his head. Degeneracy, he mutters, in the exact tone that suggests he once cannonballed into something when he had knees that worked. Meanwhile, you focus on the stone ledges, wiping them down with practiced efficiency. 1 square at a time, 1 sweep of your rag per tile. The trick is to make it look like you care without caring too much, otherwise you'll break your back for no thanks. That's when you hear a different sound. A sharper one. Clink. You turn, ears perked. It's a telltale sound, clay jar meeting marble in a way that suggests impending disaster. Sure enough, a woman's dropped her oil pot. It lies shattered, golden liquid spreading like a tiny, fragrant lake. You rush over. Not to scold, never that. Just to help. Slippery surfaces are enemy number 1, and you've seen what a single patch of oil can do to an overconfident merchant in smooth sandals. You sprinkle crushed chalk to absorb the slick and offer her a replacement jar, one from the communal stock, still half full. She smiles, grateful. And then she asks you a question. Do you ever get tired of this? You pause. Because no one ever asks you that. You think about it. About the repetition, the smells, the sore muscles, the endless towel folding. The fragments of people's lives that drift past you like steam, leaving almost nothing behind. You shrug. Sometimes. But then someone drops their oil, and I get to be the hero. She laughs. So do you. Historians still argue whether bath attendants held any real social power, or if they were simply fixtures, necessary but invisible. You know the answer varies by day, by guest, by moment. Some look through you. Some look to you. Occasionally, one actually sees you. As the woman moves on, a group of older men claim the benches near the frigidarium. One of them is Lucius, a retired military officer with a knee that clicks louder than the door latch. He lowers himself slowly, grunting like a bad hinge. He waves you over. You hear the latest Senate nonsense? You nod. Of course you have. You hear everything. He proceeds to explain it anyway, in great detail, while gesturing with increasingly exaggerated hand motions. You learn very little, but you do get splashed twice. When he finally eases into the pool, he sighs with something close to joy. Cold water's the only honest thing left in Rome, he says. You leave him to it and tend to the brazier in the tepidarium. The coals are glowing low. You feed it gently, wood first, then a small puff of breath, like coaxing a shy cat. The flame obliges, licking upward with renewed life. You check the scent jars. Refill the rosemary. Replace the wilted bay leaves with fresh. You straighten the reed mats near the changing area. You realign the water ladles. All these motions you do almost automatically now, with a kind of soft choreography. That's when you see the boy again. The same one who came through the side gate this morning. He's back, this time with a cloth bundle under his arm and a look of deep determination. You raise an eyebrow. He nods toward the door. I brought my own strigil. You stifle a laugh. You wave him in. He moves carefully, setting his bundle near the bench. He pulls out a worn but usable strigil, a tiny amphora of oil, and, unexpectedly, a small clay tablet. You blink. He sees your confusion and shrugs. I want to record what I owe you. It takes a moment for the weight of that sentence to land. You sit beside him, just for a breath. You owe me nothing, you say. He nods. Still, I want to remember. So you help him press the tablet gently, his little stylus carving uneven marks into soft clay. His letters wobble, but they're legible. Owed, one clean towel. One safe place. You don't say anything. You just pat his shoulder and walk away before your throat does something dramatic. Back in the hot room, steam curls upward like whispered stories. One man hums a lullaby to himself. Another cracks a joke about Nero's singing voice, comparing it to a goat being strangled by bad poetry. A few people chuckle. One actually snorts. You finish your circuit of the rooms. Everything looks good. Peaceful. Then you spot Gaius Celsus Maximus again. He's standing beside a column, dripping and half-wrapped in his towel like a badly organized toga party. He raises a hand. You raise both brows. I require ambience, he declares again. You sigh. Deeply. But there's a smile under it now. Because yes, it's repetitive. Yes, it's exhausting. Yes, your feet hurt, your back's been cracking like old pottery, and the scent of warm basil oil has lodged permanently in your sinuses. But there's something comforting in the rhythm. Something strangely noble in being the quiet architect of someone else's comfort. You pick up a fresh bundle of herbs. Let the ambience begin. It's late afternoon now, and the shadows on the mosaic floor have stretched long enough to start whispering bedtime stories to the grout. You can feel the whole building exhale, just slightly. The hot air lingers, but it's no longer aggressive, more like a sleepy lion sunning itself on a marble slab. Even the fires in the furnace seem to crackle slower, less demanding. You take a moment to yourself. Lean against a pillar that hasn't shifted in 100 years. Stretch your back until it pops, then tilt your head just far enough to hear the soft trickle of the fountain near the entrance. A few final patrons wander in, people who treat the baths like a last stop before heading home. An old woman with a bag of laundry, and the tiniest dog you've ever seen tucked under her arm. A man in dusty boots who orders warm water with all the intensity of a military general commanding troops. A young couple walking so close together they might be trying to share a ribcage. You manage all of them with the ease of a seasoned conductor leading a slightly tipsy orchestra. It's all timing. One nod here, one nudge of a water bucket there, One reminder to not bring food into the caldarium, yes, even if it's just a figure. You pass by a small cluster of scribes, their inky fingers leaving telltale smudges on everything they touch. They're arguing about some new decree from the Senate, or possibly which playwright had the best insults. You catch the phrase, plucked like a goose and twice as loud, and decide not to linger. Then comes one of your favorite tasks of the day, the oil scrape. A man is already standing by the wall, arms raised like a triumphant gladiator, ready to be cleaned. You take your strigil, curved and worn to the shape of your hand, and begin the familiar ritual. Oil scrape, wipe, repeat. The man sighs with pleasure. You do this like a priest, he murmurs. You snort. Only with less incense. Still, there's truth in what he says. The Roman bathhouse is almost a temple, in its own strange way. Not of gods, but of water and warmth, and the quiet dignity of being made clean. Even the act of scraping oil and sweat from a person's body has a kind of grace to it. It's intimate, but not invasive. Practical, but deeply human. Historians still debate whether this job was considered a low-status task or a deeply trusted one. After all, you're handling bodies, belongings, and the gossip that floats like steam through every room. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's the point. Your next client is more talkative. An older woman who tells you all about her neighbor's scandalous fig tree. Yes, fig tree. As if you were her niece and also the town magistrate. You nod at all the right places. Apparently, the tree grows over the property line and has been accused of dropping fruit like an act of war. You file this under urgent botanical drama and move on. In the corner, two young boys have gotten hold of a water ladle and are taking turns splashing each other when they think no one is watching. You catch them mid-splash, arms frozen mid-air, expressions like startled statues. You say nothing. Just give them the look. The one that says, I too was young. I too once weaponized bath utensils. But also, not today, tiny sirs. They slink off with exaggerated innocence. One pretends to be deeply fascinated by the grout between the tiles. You begin the process of winding things down. Towels are gathered, hung to dry. The borrowed strigils are rinsed. Then lined up like sleepy soldiers. The floors are swept. The aroma jars closed and corked. You douse one of the smaller braziers, watching the steam rise as hot meats cool, smoke curling up like ancient penmanship, a final flourish. You take stock of what's left. A basket of eucalyptus leaves that can wait until morning. A cracked soap dish that needs replacing. A bundle of linen left behind by someone who may or may not remember tomorrow. And, of course, the tablets. Some patrons leave behind little notes. Clay ones, yes, though parchment has its day, too. Requests for appointments, anonymous complaints. The tepidarium is not tepid enough. Even the occasional thank you. You find one today, set near the caldarium wall, pressed into a half-soft tablet. It reads simply, Today, the heat melted more than just sweat. Poetic. Slightly dramatic. Possibly from the same person who claimed the frigidarium gave them emotional clarity last week. Still, you tuck it into the collection. You've got a box in the back with these things, snippets of your invisible profession, where the patrons remember you only vaguely but leave behind proof they were, for a moment, changed. You lift a bucket to carry toward the back hallway, and hear something shift behind you, a soft thud. You turn curious. It's the boy. The same one with the cloth bundle and the strigil. He's asleep. Curled up near the edge of the hot room, wrapped in a towel 2 sizes too large, like a chick hiding in its eggshell. You don't wake him. You just drape a fresh linen over his legs and sit for a moment. There's a theory, some say, that the baths weren't just for bodies, but for souls. A daily baptism into the warm, ordinary holiness of clean skin and soft voices. You're not a philosopher, but you've seen enough to think they might be right. You finish your final circuit of the building, checking the locks, the taps, the shadows. And then, for the first time all day, you sit. You lean back against the wall. Close your eyes. There is no silence in Rome, not truly. But this comes close, just the hum of distant carts, the whisper of cooling stone, and the even, steady breath of a boy asleep near a room full of fire. And somewhere behind your eyelids, in that warm flicker of exhaustion and routine, something like peace settles in. You'll have to wake up soon. But not just yet. Dusk seeps in like wine poured too generously, slow, warm, and just a little extravagant. The light from the oculus above shifts to a deeper gold, then softens into mauve as the sky outside pulls on its twilight robe. The last of the patrons have gone. Even the boy, now gently roused, has been led home by a woman with flour on her sleeves and worry in her eyes. She thanked you with a nod that said more than words ever could. The towel remains folded by the door. You begin the deeper cleaning, the kind that doesn't happen unless it's just you, the darkening halls, and the scent of eucalyptus clinging to the tiles like gossip that refuses to leave. You start in the frigidarium. The cold air bites, but less like a predator now and more like an old friend with dry humor. You scrub the edge of the pool with a stiff bristle brush, the same way it's been done for decades. Probably centuries. The stone tells you nothing, but you imagine it hums with memory under your hand. Historians still argue whether the design of Roman baths followed a fixed blueprint, or if each one was a unique architectural fingerprint of its city. But here, in this space, it feels like ritual, an order of rooms and temperatures that has become sacred through repetition. As you move to the tepidarium, you think about your hands. How they know the difference between oil residue and sweat, between cracked tile and smooth, and how they carry the knowledge of the building like a second language. You could walk this place blindfolded. You almost did once on a dare. In the storage alcove, you sort the laundry, tunics, linens, discarded undergarments someone will be too embarrassed to reclaim tomorrow. You stack the sandals. You murmur apologies to the ones whose soles are still damp. They'll grumble tomorrow, no doubt. You imagine someone composing a formal complaint in verse. Oh, cursed be the wet shoe that squeaks in the Senate. A stray chicken wanders in through the open courtyard door. Not entirely unusual. You greet it like an old coworker, and it blinks at you like you're the intern. It pecks at a soap crumb and wanders out again, unimpressed by your work ethic. You pause to light a small oil lamp, watching the wick catch. That flicker becomes your companion as you enter the furnace corridor. The hypocaust system, the brilliant underfloor heating, still radiates a ghostly warmth even now, though the fires have died to coals. You check the channels with a long iron rod, tapping ash free from where it gathers like old secrets. You inhale the earthy tang of burnt olive wood and char. There's something oddly sacred about this part of the building. It's not public-facing, not praised in speeches or written into travel guides. But here, the real work happens. Heat is born in the dark, fed like a baby god, and sent up to fill the spaces where laughter and debates echo. You've bled for this furnace. Burned your wrist once, chasing a spark. It left a mark shaped like a comma, like the building was editing you. A colleague once said the hypocaust is like the nervous system of the bathhouse, always working, always unseen. But you think it's more like a heart, pumping warmth into every limb, thudding with effort. And like any heart, it demands respect. You check the copper pipe that's prone to leaking. Still dry. A small victory. You reward yourself with a fig from the bowl near the staff bench. It's overripe and absolutely perfect. You eat it in 3 bites, juice dripping down your thumb like ambrosia disguised as plumbing incentive. Back in the atrium, you begin laying out tomorrow's oils, small amphorae-lined like sentinels. Lavender, rosemary, myrrh, and the thick green one that smells like crushed celery but makes even the crankiest senator sigh in relief. A scribe wanders in from the side entrance, face smudged with ink, scroll tucked under his arm like a sleeping cat. "Forgot my tablet," he mutters, then pauses when he sees you. "You ever wonder if this place remembers all of us?" he asks. You glance around the atrium, at the columns, the benches worn smooth by backs and backsides, the groove in the floor where 1,000 sandals have traced the same loop. "It remembers our smell," you reply. "So yes." He laughs, picks up his tablet. It reads, "Received, 1 towel, slightly damp. Returned, 1 complaint about tepid water." You both agree it's a masterpiece. He vanishes back into the street. Outside, Rome is settling in for the night. Bread ovens puff their last breath. Windows blink with lamplight. You can smell garum, fish sauce so pungent you could use it to end arguments, and fresh bread. An odd pairing. A very Roman one. You lower the final shutters. Lock the main doors. The bathhouse groans quietly, like a body stretching before bed. You sit for a moment at the foot of the mosaic fountain. Dip your fingers into the water. Cool now, but still holding the day's echoes. There's a tablet in your satchel. You forgot it earlier. Just a scrap of clay, half-written, but it says, "Was tired. Got clean. Feel better." You smile. You don't know if it was a patron or one of your own notes, scribbled in a break between shifts. But it's true. You were tired. You got clean. And somehow, you do feel better. Somewhere upstairs, a pigeon coos in the rafters. You take that as your cue. You stand. Stretch again. Blow out the oil lamp. And step out into the cooling Roman night, where the stars wink down as if to say, "Nice job." The city exhales. Rome at night doesn't sleep, it murmurs. The marble hush of streets just washed in starlight feels softer than it has any right to, and the air tastes like hearth smoke and ripening figs. Your sandals flap quietly as you walk toward the attendants' quarters, past the quiet stalls of vendors and the occasional drunken poet mumbling odes to an indifferent moon. You swing open the modest door to the attendants' anteroom, a low-roof space that smells like oil, sweat, and stories too often repeated. It's not much, but it's yours. And tonight you're early enough to get one of the better stools. Two other attendants are already there, Marcius, still peeling a blister from his heel, and Lucilla, who's trying to wring water from a towel that has clearly given up the will to be dry. They both nod at you like gladiators between bouts. "Any broken tiles today?" Lucilla asks without looking. "Just one," you reply. "But the tile claimed it was an act of protest." She snorts. "Tell it the floor doesn't negotiate." You sit and accept the communal wine. Mostly water, a bit sour, exactly what your bones expect. It's served in the same dented cup everyone uses, passed back and forth like a secret. You drink. You sigh. You lean back until your spine pops once, like a fig pit cracking underfoot. Marcius pulls out a small wooden tablet, the accounting slate. "Wages came in," he says, as if announcing the results of a chariot race. He hands you your cut. A few bronze coins. You count them twice, not because you distrust Marcius, but because the numbers are so small it's hard to believe they're real. "Enough for bread, at least," you murmur. "Maybe even garlic," Lucilla offers, winking. "A feast fit for Saturn himself." You tuck the coins into your sash and nod. If Saturn enjoys chewing for 40 minutes straight. Historians still argue whether bath attendants were technically slaves, freedmen, or low-paid public employees. In truth, the answer likely changed by region, by owner, or by whim. But you've never seen a title make the water hotter or the coins heavier. So here, you're just a worker. Someone who makes things clean. Someone who remembers who left their towel behind and who always complains the water's too cold. Someone who, earlier today, rescued a child from slipping headfirst into the caldarium, and was rewarded with a hug, a sneeze, and a sticky fig. You trade stories with Lucilla and Marcius as you all clean your tools. Brushes, scraping knives, small pots of oil that seem to multiply despite every effort to ration them. Lucilla recounts a man who demanded a private room for his spiritual purification, and then tried to host a poetry reading in the steam chamber. She had to redirect a senator and 3 schoolteachers around the chaos. "He kept rhyming aqua with drama," she sighs. "It was like being assaulted with papyrus." Marcius chimes in. "At least it wasn't like last week's woman who brought a goose." "For companionship," she said. "You say that like it's not the most Roman thing possible." The jokes soften as the night deepens. You each drift into silence at your own pace, listening to the creak of timbers above, the occasional whinny of a horse from the street, and once, the unmistakable scream of a cat discovering its own reflection in a wine jug. You step out onto the stoop to catch the last breath of the day. Rome looks different now, softer, somehow older, like a grandmother in her night robe. Lamps flicker in upper windows. Somewhere, a reed flute plays a lullaby meant more for the player than anyone else. You think of your own bedroll, waiting just inside. It's not grand. Straw-stuffed, a little lumpy, but yours. And tonight that's enough. There's a quiet kind of pride in ending the day tired but upright. You haven't conquered Gaul. You haven't debated Cicero. But you've held back a flood of grime, calmed 100 complaints, saved a wayward goose from becoming bath stew, and made the world, if only for a few hours, feel more ordered than chaotic. And isn't that what the Roman world loved best? Order from chaos. Symmetry from noise. Baths that steamed in time with the sunrise, warmed by hands like yours. You stretch one last time, your spine protesting with all the drama of a failed philosopher. You smile. Tomorrow will be the same. Fires to light. Floors to scrub. Philosophers to dodge. Goats to avoid. Probably. But for now, there is peace. The kind that comes from work well done. From knowing you've kept something ancient alive, not with scrolls or swords, but with soap, stone, and your own 2 hands. You step back inside. You roll into your blanket. The straw creaks. The floor cools beneath your hip. The night folds around you like a tunic too big, and just as comforting. You wake before the sun, as always. It's not a commandment, it's just habit. Your eyes open to the gray blur of early Roman dawn, and for a moment you lie still, listening to the distant cooing of doves and the occasional shuffle of another attendant stirring beside you. The straw crackles as you move, bits clinging to your tunic like yesterday doesn't want to let go just yet. There's no dramatic trumpet announcing your morning. No servant with a tray of fruit and wine. Just your own limbs, stiff with sleep and yesterday's work, pulling you upright. You move quietly, so as not to wake the others, and splash your face from a small ceramic bowl left by the door. The water's cold. It always is. That's the point. A reminder that you're alive, and that Rome waits for no one, not even the bath attendants. Outside, the streets are still quiet, the kind of hush that only lasts until the bread ovens fire up and the city remembers it has things to do. You trudge past carts stacked with amphorae, past a donkey scratching itself furiously on a wall, past a man arguing softly with his own sandal strap. At the baths, the gates are just being unlatched by an older doorkeeper who greets you with the enthusiasm of boiled cabbage. You nod back, because anything more is wasted before sunrise. You move through the halls of the baths with a strange sense of affection. These aren't just walls and tiles anymore. They're your morning companions. You know every cracked stone, every bench that rocks just slightly, every part of the mosaic where someone once used too much blue. The furnaces come first. Always the furnaces. You kneel and feed the fire with practiced hands. The heat is greedy, licking the air with its orange tongue. It's too early to sweat, and yet you do. A tribute to the day ahead. Once the heat is stable, you begin your circuit, testing the caldarium's steam, adjusting airflow in the tepidarium, double-checking the frigidarium's water levels. It's a ballet, really, but one choreographed by soot and soap rather than grace and glory. Historians still argue over whether bath attendants had fixed routines or improvised based on the layout and clientele. But you know the truth, both. Every bathhouse had its quirks. Every crowd had its rhythms. You learn them or you drown in complaints. As sunlight stretches across the floor like spilled honey, the first customers arrive. The regulars, of course. A lawyer who always insists on extra oil. A retired soldier with exactly 3 stories and no intention of telling fewer. A pair of sisters who bicker in whispers and only use the tepidarium. You greet them with nods, small smiles, and just enough energy to look professional but not perky. Perky, at this hour, is suspicious. And then the flow begins. Rome wakes. The baths hum with sandals and voices and the slap of water against stone. It's a symphony of cleanliness, gossip, minor injuries, and surprising philosophical debates. you manage the Strigil station while overhearing a spirited argument about whether cucumbers are inherently funny. They are. Somewhere behind you, a sponge on a stick falls with a sad slap. A boy shouts something about soap in his eye. Someone else is laughing because their friend slipped, not badly, just enough to dent their pride. And you? You're moving through it all like a fish in a current. Passing oil jars. Replacing towels. Whispering the temperature like a prayer. You think about yesterday's scribble, the dead of goats and favors carved beside a garden bench. You think about how many debts never get paid. And how many do, just not in coins. Because in this place, payment comes in many forms. A nod from the senator. A smile from the baker. A secret poem slipped onto your drying shelf, written in bad Latin but with good heart. You find yourself humming, just a little, as you sweep out a corner of the apoditarium. The sunlight catches the steam in midair and turns it into gold. A customer walks by and drops a coin in the tip bowl. You don't hear it land, but you hear the pause, the brief moment of generosity. The day passes slowly, then suddenly. That's how all Roman days feel. Time is elastic when measured by the number of oil flasks you refill. Eventually, the light begins to fade again. And you find yourself standing in the same spot as yesterday. By the shelf of soaps, the basin of warm water, the tile that still refuses to lay flat. You sigh, stretch your fingers, and look around. The crowd thins. The heat softens. The voices quiet down to murmurs. The baths are closing. You help with the final sweep. You stack towels into bundles that will never stay folded. You cap the oil jars. You nod goodbye to the last patron, who leaves with the walk of someone feeling 3 pounds lighter in soul. And then, for a brief moment, the baths belong only to you again. You stand in the center of the frigidarium and listen to nothing. No splashing. No shouting. Just the drip of a slow leak and the tired ache in your shoulders. You exhale. Because this, too, is part of it. The stillness. The echo. The pause between one day and the next. And now we slow. Let the walls soften in your mind. Let the sound of water lapping at worn tiles begin to fade into something quieter, gentler. Imagine the echo of footsteps tapering into silence, each step settling into dust, into memory. You're no longer holding a towel or a brush. No longer answering questions or dodging elbows. You're just here, at the edge of a place built for warmth. A place made to hold the noise of the day and then release it, softly, into night. Outside, Rome begins to sleep. The windows close. The ovens go cold. But the air still carries stories, scented with rosemary, ash, and faint perfumes left behind. A tablet left half scribbled on a shelf. A whisper echoing from the caldarium. A ghost of laughter in the steam. You sit, back against warm stone, hands resting in your lap. The world is very old, and very kind in this moment. Because it understands that small things matter. That care matters. That someone, long ago, invented a place where bodies could rest and spirits could float for a while. The moon climbs quietly above the rooftops. The stars blink. The fire sighs one last time. And you, just you, breathe slowly. Easily. Like the city itself is rocking you gently to sleep. There's nothing more to remember tonight. You've done enough. Good night, traveler. Hey guys. My name is Stefan. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means a lot and I look forward to bringing you new topics soon. Stay kind, stay inspired, and I'll see you tomorrow.